Baba Guanille o Ogun Mariwo Aguanille o Ogun Mariwo Ogun Apo.
Buru, Iboya, Ibuche, to everybody in Cyberland. I cheer to you all. Many blessings. All right, and may Olodumare always take care of you. So, before I begin, please give me a like, give me a subscribe, and if you like what you're seeing, give me a share. All right, always leave me comments in the bottom, and I'm always going to get back to you as soon as I'm able to. For today, I want to make sure that I cover a very, very important topic. And I'm doing this because there's a misconception out there about this Orisha. I've heard people even say that this Orisha is dumb. And it baffles me. One, because I don't know who would have the nerve to call an Orisha dumb. And two, it's the lack of understanding. I think that hurts me the most. And again, that's the purpose of this channel, right? Let's learn together. Let's teach each other. Let's learn perspective. And let's get down to basics. Okay. In Ifa, in the diaspora of what is Ifa, which is where Afro-Cubano, this is where we get the Caribbean aspects, South American aspects of Ifa. All right, we understand this Orisha, and even in Africa, okay, so diaspora and in Africa, we understand this Orisha to be the first Orisha to come to earth to try to inhabit it. This Orisha was chosen to come down because he's one of the elder ones, he's one of the stronger ones, and he's one that has a lot of ability. Okay, so in case you were wondering, our topic today, we are going to speak about Oggun. Oggun. That's why I wore a little bit of green right here, right? Green and yellow for Orula, but green. Right? Because when we talk about Oggun, I want to try to get back to some of the basics, right? What do we know about Oggun? What do we know? We know we see people running around with green and black beads. And we say, oh, that's Oggun. We know we see people that talk about the number 3 and the number 7 that are somewhat synchronized with Oggun. We talk about the aspect of Oggun when we talk about the synchronization of Christianity. All right, you talk a lot of people that talk about Saint Alberto. We talk about Saint Michael, the archangel. So you talk about a lot of different aspects. But what's the most important thing? Not the synchronization with Christianity, not the colors, not the numbers, but look how much influence that Oggun has had already, and I'm only telling you the first 2 lines, right? The first Orisha to touch the earth in order to inhabit, an Orisha that was synchronized with Catholicism and Christianity in order to preserve the right of that Orisha to live today. And we talk about an Orisha that was the strongest of them all and is considered the primary warrior of our faith. So let's get down and dirty, right? Let's talk a little bit about Oggun. Okay. First off, Oggun is a warrior. Oggun is also a doctor. Oggun is an engineer. Oggun is an artist. Oggun is a musician. So then I ask you again, can he be dumb? And who would have the audacity to say such a thing? No. Oggun is iron. Oggun is anything that iron touches that is able to maneuver what is life. So I ask again, an Orisha with so much ability, an Orisha that can manipulate and has so much impact in everyday life, dumb? I think not. There's an elder brother of mine right? Ogunda Masa. Down in Tampa. Botanica, I believe, is up in Mulberry, down in Florida, near the Tampa area, anyway, up there. But one of my elders in my house, in my isla. And, and when I think about Ogun, I think about how intelligent this Babalao is. Because he epitomizes a lot of different aspects, right? But then, I remember who he is in Oba. And let me tell you, Ogun Masa, and I call him Arturo, I love you. But what that tells me is that Ogunda or Ogun has the ability to go into Ifa. So then let's get rid of that misconception too. Ogun's children should not go into Ifa. Why not? I just gave you a prime example on why Ogun children do great in Ifa. So let's peel back that onion a little bit, right? Let's peel back the onion a little bit on why maybe this misconception has occurred. In order to do that, let me explain the first point that I made. The strongest, one of the elder Orishas, the ones that came down to earth in order to inhabit. And was he successful? No, he was not successful. All right. And in our philosophy, there was many versions of this earth, and there was many attempts to inhabit this earth in order to get it just right. So, wasn't successful. But that's not the point. The point is the credibility and the faith that Olodumare had in order to send Ogun. Then we talk about the aspects of Ogun in a Pataki that talks about when he first threw the Equalist. Because Ogun, there's Patakis where Ogun became a Babalao. Went through the room of Ifa. Was a Babalao. The problem is that Ogun made metal Equalist or Opalist, right? And when he was casting, the noise itself in the Pataki would make the world tremble. The peace and tranquility that was Obatalaz was now disturbed. And at that point, they told Ogun, no, you can't do that. So maybe that misconception came from there. Then there's the other misconception of Ogun, right? The same concept, right? We go down that road where Ogun is the master of it all. He has to work 24/7 in order for the world to evolve, in order for the world to continue to do its thing. Evolution has a lot to do with Ogun. The wheel would not have been created if it wasn't for Ogun. Orisha Oku would not have to plow in order to build and move agriculture a lot faster if it wasn't for Ogun. And there's a lot of different aspects of life that we have to consider. Now, there is one Pataki that concerns me, and I want to make sure that I put this on the record. My perception of this matter is when Ogun in the Pataki where he violates Yemaya, his mother in that particular Pataki. And it was out of rage, and it was out of jealousy, and it was out of impulse that Ogun did that. But the Pataki is an oral tradition in order to make a point, an ethical and moral point. And the point here is to show us who is the temperament and what is the characteristic of Ogun. Again, not that he's dumb; he's very intelligent. He's the head warrior. He's the general. He's making moves. Okay, and in that Pataki, it was his impulse. It was his jealousy. With Chango, and this is where Chango kind of comes into the fold in many Patakis, but this is one of them. And Ogun wanted to show his might. He wanted to put his stance. He wanted to kind of make sure that he said, hey, this is my house and I do what I want. So because of that aspect, Ogun is now looked at like, wow, he violated the mother, but not understanding that we had to look at the ethics and morals, right, and the whys behind that story. It was to show us that Ogun, anybody who's a child of Ogun, who has an Obatori of Ogun, it's your impulses that get you in trouble. It's your temperament that gets you in trouble. Okay, because I will tell you one thing. In Ogun, some of the characteristics that I see as they're troubled with love. Because they're honorable. They're reliable. Right? They're workers. That's who Ogun is, and that's who his children begin to emulate. Although they're not Ogun, just like your mother and your father, you're going to begin to share some of those temperaments. So we have to be able to combat that to fit into our everyday lives. And not only our everyday lives, but 2021. So then again, Ogun, dumb? No. Ogun has his struggles just like any other Orisha. But we have to kind of pay attention to that. Right? Okay. What else can we say about Ogun? Ogun is technology, computers today, everything has metal. That's Ogun. We talk about the Pataki, where Yemoya or Batala was almost gonna, curse Ogun, but Ogun cursed himself to go work 24/7 in the mountains, where this is the first time where we actually saw that the world stopped. Because Ogun was in the mountains, he's just jobbing it up, but he's jobbing it up for himself, not understanding what was it that his presence, what his presence actually was doing for the world. And when he went to hide in the mountains out of shame and embarrassment for what he did, that he caused a ripple effect that the world stopped. And it was only Ochun that had to go into the mountain to go get him out, right? And show him that, hey, you're hiding out in the mountains because you're embarrassed and you're ashamed. You're causing problems over here. People are dying. We need you, right? When we talk about Ochun bringing him out, we talk about a lot of different aspects of the relationship between Ochun and a lot of different divinities. But that begins to show us a glimpse of the power that Ochun has. But then as we continue to unravel who is Ogun, we look at things now at a spiritual lens. Ogun is the knife for the four-legged animals. Ogun is what we say, the priests and priestesses in this faith, when we are doing sacrifices to the Orishas. We give honor to Ogun constantly. So again, Ogun is pretty important. Ogun gets a lot of love. But we need to remember who he is. And we got to remember that Ogun is not one to be trifled with, but one that we want to keep calm. Ogun is fierce and swift, but intelligent and strategic. So we have to understand who is Ogun. And we got to give appreciation to Ogun. Something about Ogun would be another story where we see where Yemoya and Ogun are married, right? And this is where Yemaya gets the machete, and there's a different path of Yemoya. But more particularly, this is where some of the friction between Yemoya and Ogun occur too, because there's patakis that talk about where Ogun's dogs were able to see what Yemoya was doing and caught her doing some treasonous stuff. But in those stories, you begin to unravel again. He can't be that stupid if he has guard dogs protecting and looking, right? When you have the association between Ogun and Yemoya, which is the mother of the Osha, right? Which is water, which is an element that is necessary for this world. Then we have to understand that unity and that effort doesn't just come with anybody, but that Pataki is giving us another sign. Ogun means a lot. When we talk about Ogun, There are certain patakis or philosophies that talk about Ogun being, when we say Olofin, right? Awa Olofin, we're talking about the king, right? That kind of governs everything spiritual in this faith. We talk about the right hand man being Ogun, and we talk about the left hand man being Chango. And when we begin to unravel some of that philosophy and some of those patakis that begin to push that narrative, we begin to understand the might, the evolution, right? And then we begin to see Chango, which is the charisma, which is the harmony. And then we begin to understand who is Oba Ilo, who's Chango, which is the king of the plaza, the king of the city. And then we talk about Obaoko, which is Ogun, which is the king of the woods, the mountainous areas, right? But when those two are in harmony, then the world is moving in a beautiful, beautiful way. Evolution with charisma and harmony, and those two together do beautiful things. But then there's patakis on White Chango and Ogun. We got to be careful because those relationships are very temperamental. Very temperamental. So we have to understand how to manipulate those energies. Because there's another pataki that talks about how Chango and Ogun went to war and they almost finished with the whole world. If it wasn't for Obatala coming down and talking to both of them and trying to bring peace, harmony, because that's what was necessary, right? And there's even a lot of patakis, and I'm on more Chango, that talk about Ogun being stronger than Chango. And the only reason Chango wins the war is because Oya is always there to defend him. So we have to look at Ogun for who he is and the greatness that is Ogun. Mafarafung Ogun. Mafarafung Ogun. A couple of things I put on here. Let's see. We talked about the colors, the green and black. We talked about the 3 and 7s. We talked about the professions that have to do with all metal. We talk about the first Orisha that attempted to conquer the earth in order to make it habitable for humans. We talk about the first to throw the Okales, which shows us that Ogun was a Babalao and went through Ifa, which shows us that there's patakis that mention that he had to work 24/7 because of the violation that he did with Yemaya, his mother at that time in that pataki, which shows us that he works 24/7. But more importantly, that he falls into the temperaments and it's his emotions that when they drive, they're fierce, right? We also talk about him being noble and honorable, but fierce and swift. We talk about strong temperaments and love being his weakness. Love being his weakness. But wanted to make sure that we talked about Ogun. I wanted to make sure that we squash who is Ogun. And that people look at Ogun and say, wow, that's Ogun. The very first time people get initiated, they receive their warriors. Ogun is part of that pack. So it's very important to give thanks to Ogun. Alright? So Mafarafung Ogun. If you like this video, give me the like, the share. If you like the shirt, I gotta end with somebody for the shirts. But Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche, like, subscribe, share. Cyberland, much love to you. Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche.
Awanile onile, awanile onile, wayo kilonje.